He had it all, millions in the bank, a mansion in the hills, and a wife who vanished without a word. But while the world whispered scandal, a stranger mopping his marble floors was hiding a secret tied to his darkest mistake. She didn't come to clean. She came to watch him fall. And what happens next? No one saw coming. The morning light slipped through the glass walls of David Langston's mansion, falling like pale gold across cold marble floors. Outside, the world stirred with traffic and summer heat, but inside, everything was still. Too still. David stood alone in his bedroom. No sound, no movement, just the soft hum of distant air conditioning and the rhythmic ticking of a designer wall clock that now felt louder than usual. His hand hovered over the empty side of the bed, sheets perfectly smooth. Her perfume was fading from the pillows, vanilla and rose, barely there. Then he saw it. A single envelope placed neatly on the nightstand. No lipstick, no perfume, just his name, David. He opened it with shaking fingers, though he already knew. Just 5 words, written in her usual elegant handwriting. Don't look for me. Goodbye. He didn't speak, didn't curse, didn't cry. He just sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the space she once filled. The silence felt alive, creeping into his chest, pushing against his ribs. Downstairs, the kitchen was spotless. The housekeeper had come and gone. Breakfast was laid out as usual, pressed juice, sourdough toast, perfectly poached eggs. But David didn't touch any of it. He walked past the granite island and poured himself a black coffee. No sugar, no cream, just bitter heat to wake him up from what felt like a bad dream. He took a sip, then stopped mid-motion. The wedding photo on the kitchen wall was tilted slightly. He hadn't noticed that before. Her doing, maybe? A message? A final gesture? He straightened it, his hand lingering on the frame longer than it should have. Hours passed. The house staff moved quietly. No one asked questions. No one mentioned her. They'd been trained not to. David didn't speak to anyone. He stood by the balcony overlooking the city, watching the clouds gather above LA's glimmering skyline. For years, this view made him feel powerful. Today, it made him feel small. Just as he turned to go back inside, a soft knock came from the front door. 2 polite taps, barely audible in the vast silence. He paused, almost relieved by the interruption. His assistant's voice echoed through the intercom. "Sir, the cleaning temp is here. Housekeeper's niece. Just for today." David pressed the button, let her in, then walked away. He didn't care. Not about staff, not about meetings, not even about the headlines that were beginning to spread online. Billionaire power couple splits. Wife disappears without warning. He clicked off his phone. Let them talk. Because for the first time in a long time, David Langston had nothing left to say. The next morning, the house buzzed softly with routine. Emails were answered by his assistant. The gardener trimmed the hedges with care. Everything functioned. Everything looked fine. But David? He was drifting. He sat in his office, surrounded by trophies of his success. Plaques, magazine covers, stock market screens blinking with numbers that no longer meant anything. He stared at an untouched glass of water. The silence felt heavier today. Then, muffled voices from the hallway reached him. A quiet woman's tone, polite, steady. "I'm just filling in. My aunt said to start with the library." That was her. The temp. The cleaning lady. David didn't turn to look. He wasn't in the mood to talk, not even to the woman sweeping dust from his imported oak floors. Elena Ruiz moved through the house like she belonged to the quiet. No loud steps, no unnecessary noise. She had a soft presence, like someone who'd learned to exist without being seen. Her ponytail was loose, her jeans faded. The only color on her was the pale blue cloth tucked in her pocket, worn at the edges. She paused in the library, running a hand over a row of leather-bound first editions. "Fancy," she murmured to herself, a small smile forming, though no one heard. David walked in halfway through her dusting. He stopped when he saw her, surprised, maybe, by the ease with which she moved through his world. She didn't flinch or fuss. She simply nodded politely and kept working. "You're not the regular," he said flatly. She looked up, calm, just filling in. "Elena." A beat. You clean often? He asked, unsure why he was still standing there. Too often, she replied with a dry smile. You rich folks love your fingerprints gone. David didn't laugh, but something in her honesty made him stay a moment longer. Later that afternoon, his phone buzzed. Investor, we need to address the lawsuit publicly. Assistant, your wife's name is trending. Want me to take it down? Board member, David, if you don't speak soon, we're in trouble. He tossed the phone face down. The lawsuit, the headlines, the whispering behind closed boardroom doors. All of it swirled into a quiet storm around him, but none of it felt real anymore. Elena passed by again, quietly wiping down the glass stair rail. David glanced up. You missed a spot, he said, almost playfully. She paused. Maybe I left it for you to see what clean really looks like. A pause, then a smirk from David. Not a smile, just a twitch of the lip. But it was more expression than he'd shown in days. She nodded once, like she'd made a small point, and kept walking. He watched her go, and for the first time since the letter, something in him stirred. Nothing big, just a flicker. Elena returned the next day, not because she had to, but because her aunt had picked up another client and Mr. Langston still needed someone to sweep the dust off his empty empire. David didn't ask why. He just let her in. In the living room, she worked quietly. He watched her from the hallway, coffee in hand, still in his sleep shirt. Her movements were slow, careful. She didn't rush like the others. She took her time with things people usually missed. Wiping behind vases, fixing crooked frames, brushing cobwebs from corners no one cared to look at. He noticed that she noticed everything. Late morning, David sat at the piano. Not to play, he hadn't touched it in years, but just to sit near it. He used to play for his wife there, back when things were simpler. Back when she used to sing along. The keys were dusty. He ran a finger across one and left a trail. From behind him, a voice broke the silence. That piano's too sad to stay quiet. He turned. Elena stood there, holding a feathered duster. Do you play? He asked. No, but my father did. Badly. She smiled. He said, you don't have to be good to make the room feel less lonely. David gave a half laugh. He sounds like a smart man. He died owing a landlord 5 months of rent, she replied softly. But yeah, he was. David didn't know what to say. He looked back at the keys, pressed one. A hollow note echoed through the room. Elena didn't move. She just said, gently, it's not the house that's cold, you know. That afternoon, something strange happened. David followed her to the study, to the library, to the wine cellar. He didn't speak much, but he watched. He noticed how she paused at every photograph of him and his wife, how her eyes softened, never judging, just understanding, like she knew what silence meant. At one point, she found a shattered photo frame tucked behind a cabinet. The glass had cracked, but the photo inside was still whole. David and his wife at their anniversary party, arms linked, forced smiles. Elena picked it up gently, turning it toward him. You want this tossed or saved? He took it from her, looked at it for a long time. Save it. That evening, David sat alone on the balcony again. Same view, same city, but his mind lingered on her words. It's not the house that's cold. She wasn't like anyone in his world. She didn't flatter. She didn't fear him. She saw through the marble, the glass, the suits, and didn't seem impressed. And yet, she came back the next day, not because she had to, but because something in that house felt unfinished. And maybe, just maybe, someone in it did too. For the first time in weeks, David was up early, showered, dressed, even made coffee himself. When Elena arrived at the usual hour, he was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, eyes tired, but present. She blinked, surprised. You look human today. He chuckled under his breath. Must be the bad dreams wearing off. As she worked, the air felt different. Not lighter, just less heavy. David sat on the armrest of the leather sofa as she cleaned nearby, casually watching her polish the frame of an old college photo. You always this good at reading people? He asked. She paused, then shrugged. Only the quiet ones. The loud ones don't say anything real. That made him smile, an actual smile. Not wide, but warm. You think I'm quiet? "I think you're screaming," she said, without looking up. Silence filled the space between them, but this time, it felt honest. The next few days became a rhythm neither of them admitted to needing. She worked. He wandered nearby. Some days they spoke only a few words. Other days, they talked about books, music, her father's stubborn piano hands, and the time David nearly lost his company to a crooked partner. He found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone. About how lonely the boardroom was. How his wife had stopped laughing years before she actually left. How he still ordered her favorite wine out of habit. Elena didn't interrupt. She just listened. One late afternoon, David offered her tea. She hesitated. "I'm not supposed to sit," she said, nodding toward the untouched table. He poured 2 cups anyway. "If anyone complains," he said, "tell them the billionaire insisted." She gave him a look. "You always use that word like it matters." David raised a brow. "It doesn't." Elena sipped her tea, then looked him in the eye. "Only to people who've never lost anything." That night, David found himself writing again. Something he hadn't done since before the scandals. Not business plans. Not speeches. Just thoughts. Fragments of feelings he'd buried under gold-trimmed living. And he wrote this one line over and over. "She listens like she already knows." The next morning, his assistant called in a panic. "We've got a leak, David. The Langston Heights case. Former tenants are coming forward. One of them claims their child was hospitalized from the move. Media's picking it up. We need you on a call now." David froze. Langston Heights. That was the project. The one his board cut corners on. The one he let happen. Too focused on margins to see the people buried beneath the concrete. He turned off his phone. Stared at the wall. Suddenly, everything felt unclean again. Downstairs, Elena scrubbed a glass vase. She could feel the tension in the air. She glanced up the stairs, her hand pausing mid-wipe. Her face was unreadable. But her eyes? They were waiting. The next morning was different. Elena didn't enter quietly. She didn't greet the house. She walked in with a stiffness in her shoulders, a silence that felt heavier than usual. David stood by the kitchen window, nursing cold coffee. His eyes flicked to her. "You heard about the story, didn't you?" he asked, already knowing the answer. She nodded. "Langston Heights." He sighed, ran a hand down his face. "It was a mistake. A rushed deal. My board cut corners. I didn't catch it in time." Elena just stood there. Not angry. Not emotional. Just still. "Do you know how many people were displaced, David?" He looked at her, startled. She never used his name before. "A lot," he said quietly. "Too many. 834 families," she said flatly. "You think they all landed on their feet?" His voice dropped. "I didn't know it would get that bad." Now she stepped forward, slowly, as if bracing for something. "You know the unit on the east side? The one with the broken fire escape?" He frowned. "Yeah, that was part of the report. Someone got hurt, I think. My little boy," she cut in. "Fell down those stairs the night we had to move. Dislocated his shoulder. Had asthma attacks for months. We slept in a van for 3 weeks." David's world stopped. He couldn't speak. Elena looked him dead in the eye. "I was one of your tenants." Silence flooded the room. It wasn't just shock, it was shame, guilt, realization, crashing all at once. David backed up a step. You came here on purpose?" She nodded. "My aunt cleans this place. I asked her to trade shifts. I wanted to see the man who signed the papers. The one who never showed up when the ceiling caved in." He looked at her, truly looked, and saw a strength he couldn't measure in money. "All this time," he whispered. "I thought I'd hate you," she said softly. "I came here with a fire in my chest. But then I saw you." His voice cracked. "And what did you see?" Elena's voice trembled. "Someone worse off than me." David sat down hard on the stool beside the counter. He couldn't breathe, couldn't run from this. Everything he built, the towers, the headlines, the dinners with governors, none of it meant anything in this moment. "I'm sorry," he said. "It wasn't defensive. It wasn't scripted. It was real. I didn't see it. I didn't see you." She nodded slowly. "I believe you," she said. "But that doesn't change what you did." "I want to fix it," he said, eyes wet now. "I don't know how, but if there's anything I can do." Elena shook her head. It's not about fixing. It's about facing it. And with that, she picked up her cloth, turned toward the hallway, and walked away. But this time, David didn't feel abandoned. He felt responsible. And that was a start. David didn't sleep that night. Not because of the headlines, not because of his investors, but because of what she said. It's not about fixing. It's about facing it. The words looped in his head like a melody he couldn't shake. By morning, he was on the phone with his legal team. He demanded full audits on every project tied to Langston Heights. He wrote a letter by hand to every former resident offering not money, but something far more rare from a billionaire, a genuine apology and a plan to make things right. He canceled meetings, called off press interviews, and announced he would step down from 2 board positions to make room for community leaders who actually understood what people needed. That afternoon, Elena returned, quiet as always, but something in her eyes had shifted. Less steel, more softness. David met her by the entryway. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said gently, "but I'm trying. Not for the cameras. For you." She raised an eyebrow. "For me. For the person who told me the truth when everyone else was too afraid." She didn't smile, but her silence wasn't cold, it was thoughtful. He gestured to the living room. "Sit with me. Just 5 minutes." She hesitated, then nodded. They sat on opposite ends of the couch. No music, no clinking glasses, just 2 people from opposite worlds finally seeing each other. He told her about the letters, the donations, the changes to his company. "I'm not proud of who I was," he admitted. "I let money blind me. I let comfort make me cruel." Elena looked at him, this man who once seemed so unreachable. "You weren't cruel," she said. "You were comfortable. That's worse." He exhaled, as if the truth let something loose in him. Then he did something that surprised them both. He said her son's name. She blinked. "You remember?" David nodded. "Of course I did." For the first time, Elena's face cracked, just slightly. Not a full smile, not forgiveness, but something like peace. And that was enough. They didn't hug. They didn't promise anything. But they sat together for a long while, in the warm afternoon light, no longer strangers. No longer billionaire and cleaning lady. Just 2 people, healing in a house that was finally learning how to breathe again. Weeks passed. The scandal faded from headlines. The lawsuit settled quietly. The board moved on, some with gritted teeth, others with respect. David Langston, the billionaire who once lived above it all, had stepped down from power. But he hadn't disappeared. Instead of high rises and gala invites, he spent his time walking through old neighborhoods, listening, donating, yes, but not just money. He gave time, attention, voice. He spoke softly now, without microphones. At home, the marble floor still gleamed, but the space felt warmer, less like a showroom, more like somewhere someone lived. The piano was open. A single note had been struck and left echoing. And sometimes, every few days, Elena would stop by. Not to clean, just to sit. One afternoon, David was pruning the small garden out back, something his wife once started but never finished. His sleeves were rolled. Dirt smudged his shirt. He hummed quietly to himself. Elena stepped out from the kitchen, carrying 2 mugs of tea. She paused at the doorway, watching him. He looked up, smiling faintly. "You know," he said, "I used to think saving face was the same as saving my life." She handed him the tea. "And now?" He took a sip, then met her eyes. "Now I know I was saved the moment someone finally told me the truth." They sat on the bench under the old magnolia tree. No need for grand gestures. No need for redemption speeches. The story wasn't tied up neatly with a bow. But for David, life no longer needed to be perfect, just honest. And Elena? She wasn't the woman who walked away after getting even. She stayed. Not for revenge. Not for closure. But because sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't the one you built it with. It's the one who showed up when it was falling apart. And stayed.